the fight that could end the NFA. For over 90 years, one law has haunted American gun owners like a shadow: the National Firearms Act of 1934. It created taxes, registries, and endless red tape for items like suppressors, short-barreled rifles, and even certain shotguns. To many, it became the symbol of government overreach, turning paperwork mistakes into felonies and treating ordinary citizens like criminals for simply owning the wrong accessory. But today, in 2025, that law is under direct fire. Not just chipped away, not just challenged, but facing a coordinated legal and political push to dismantle it entirely. The charge is being led by Gun Owners of America, GOA, backed by 15 states, major legal allies, and a surge of public momentum. For the first time in nearly a century, the NFA's survival is no longer guaranteed. This is not a side skirmish, this is the frontline battle. And if the NFA collapses, the entire map of American gun ownership changes overnight. So let's break down how we got here, what GOA's plan looks like, and why this moment might be the most important turning point for gun rights in our lifetime. Chapter 1. The Origins of the NFA Law, Born in Fear. The story of the NFA starts in the chaos of the 1930s. Gangsters like Al Capone and John Dillinger dominated headlines, wielding Tommy guns and sawn-off shotguns. Politicians panicked and demanded action. Instead of targeting criminals directly, Congress targeted the tools. The National Firearms Act of 1934 imposed heavy restrictions, not by outright bans, but by taxation and registration. A $200 tax on certain weapons equivalent to almost $4,500 today. A mandatory federal registry for suppressors, machine guns, and short-barreled rifles and shotguns. Severe criminal penalties for non-compliance, even for paperwork mistakes. The effect? Ordinary Americans were priced out, suppressed into silence, or criminalized by accident. The law didn't stop organized crime, but it did build the foundation of federal gun control that remains today. Chapter 2. Why the NFA became a target. For decades, the NFA was treated as untouchable. Courts deferred to it. Congress left it alone. Even major gun rights groups rarely pushed to repeal it. But over time, frustration grew. Suppressors. In most of the world, they're treated like safety tools to protect hearing. In the US, they became a bureaucratic nightmare. Short-barreled rifles and shotguns, popular and practical for home defense, but placed in the same legal category as machine guns. Registry system. Vulnerable to abuse, mistakes, and delays, punishing law-abiding owners. For gun owners, the NFA wasn't just about policy. It was about principle. Why should the government tax a constitutional right? Why should citizens face 10 years in prison for a barrel that's an inch too short? That's why the NFA has always been the big dragon in the room. And now, after decades, it's finally being challenged head-on. Chapter 3. GOA's One Big Beautiful Lawsuit. In 2025, Gun Owners of America launched what they called the One Big Beautiful Lawsuit. The strategy is simple but devastating. Attack the NFA at its weakest link, the $200 tax. Here's the logic. In August 2025, Congress repealed the NFA's tax as part of a budget bill. Without the tax, the law's structure collapses. The Supreme Court has long recognized that Congress can't use taxes as a backdoor way to restrict rights. If the tax is gone, the justification for registration requirements and penalties collapses too. The GOA, backed by 15 Republican-led states, is using this opening to argue that the entire NFA is unconstitutional and must fall. Key points in their lawsuit. The NFA is outdated and inconsistent with modern constitutional standards. Bruin 2022 set a history and tradition test that the NFA cannot meet. Removing the tax leaves the law with no legal backbone. This isn't nibbling at the edges. This is a direct attempt to end the NFA itself. Chapter 4. The Political Allies and State Support. What makes this push different is that GOA isn't fighting alone. A coalition of 15 state attorneys general joined the lawsuit, arguing the NFA violates both the Second Amendment and the 10th Amendment, state sovereignty. Why this matters. States give the lawsuit credibility and political weight. It signals growing momentum beyond just grassroots groups. Courts are more likely to take a challenge seriously when multiple states stand behind it. Some notable allies: Texas, leading the charge, emphasizing citizens' right to self-defense without federal interference. Florida and Missouri, highlighting the burden on ordinary citizens who face felony charges for technical violations. Montana and Idaho, stressing that the NFA stifles industries like suppressor manufacturing. This multi-state alliance transforms the lawsuit from a single case into a national campaign. Chapter 5. Why the courts might actually listen this time. Historically, NFA challenges failed, but the legal climate has shifted dramatically after two landmark Supreme Court cases. District of Columbia versus Heller, 2008, confirmed the Second Amendment protects individual ownership. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin, 2022, created the text, history, and tradition test for all gun laws. Under Bruin, the government must prove that modern restrictions are rooted in America's historical tradition. The NFA, born in the 1930s, has no founding-era equivalent. That makes it especially vulnerable. Why this lawsuit could succeed? The tax repeal undermines the law's foundation. Bruin sets a new legal test that the NFA fails. A coalition of states adds political and legal firepower. A Supreme Court increasingly willing to enforce constitutional text may finally be ready to strike. For the first time in nearly a century, the dragon looks mortal, and the stage is set for the second half of the battle. Chapter 6. The industry stands to gain. The National Firearms Act has long been a roadblock for innovation and business. Entire sectors of the firearms industry have been artificially slowed down by rules that add delays, costs, and risks. Removing those restrictions would unleash enormous potential. Suppressor market. In countries like Finland and Norway, suppressors are treated as basic safety equipment to protect hearing. In the US, the NFA turned them into a luxury item. Many people avoided buying them simply because the process was a year-long nightmare. Without the NFA, suppressors become accessible, meaning demand could explode overnight. Custom rifle builders. Thousands of small shops have avoided short-barreled rifle projects because a simple paperwork mistake could land a customer in prison. Repealing the NFA would encourage builders to innovate freely, pushing new designs and custom builds. Local gun shops. Independent FFL dealers spend hours explaining the NFA to frustrated customers, watching potential sales walk out the door. A repeal means fewer lost sales and more revenue in their communities. Economic ripple effect. Analysts estimate the NFA has cost the firearms industry billions in lost sales over the last century. Dismantling it would shift those billions back into American businesses and jobs. This chapter highlights that repeal isn't just a constitutional win, it's an economic revival. Chapter 7. Public safety arguments and the rebuttal. Opponents claim that repealing the NFA would endanger public safety, but those arguments collapse when examined against real data. Suppressors and crime. According to federal crime reports, suppressors are used in less than 0.003% of crimes. They are overwhelmingly owned by lawful citizens. Their main role is hearing protection, not stealth. Short-barreled rifles. Ballistics experts note that barrel length does not make a weapon more lethal in criminal use. Most crimes involve handguns, not NFA-regulated rifles. Registration schemes. Criminals do not comply with registration or tax stamp rules. The NFA has punished law-abiding citizens while doing nothing to stop bad actors. Courts are recognizing this reality. Under the Bruin test, safety claims must be tied to historical tradition, and there's no history of the founders limiting barrel length or taxing arms into compliance. Chapter 8. The political battlefield. Ahead. The courtroom is only half the fight. Even if the NFA falls, politicians will try to claw back restrictions with new laws. California's next move. Lawmakers already introduced AB 1078 to ration gun purchases to 3 per month. If they can't block through federal law, they'll try at the state level. New York's strategy. After Bruin gutted its carry restrictions, New York added dozens of new sensitive places where carry is banned. Everything from entire city blocks to public parks. Congressional risks. Anti-gun legislators in D.C. may draft replacement laws that repackage NFA-style restrictions under new names. The takeaway: victories are temporary unless citizens stay alert. Legal wins must be defended in the political arena because states and Congress will adapt quickly. Chapter 9. How this impacts everyday gun owners. For ordinary gun owners, the repeal of the NFA would remove some of the biggest headaches in firearms ownership. Suppressor access. No more $200 tax. No more 12-month waits. A suppressor could be bought like any other accessory, protecting hearing and reducing noise at the range. Short-barreled rifles and shotguns. No more risk of accidentally breaking the law by changing a stock or barrel. People could configure firearms safely and legally without worrying about a felony. Travel freedom. Currently, owners of certain NFA items need federal permission to cross state lines. A repeal eliminates that burden. Peace of mind. No more fear of prison time for paperwork mistakes or technical violations. Law-abiding citizens would finally be free to focus on safety and training, not compliance nightmares. This isn't abstract. It's about giving back confidence and peace of mind to millions of people. Chapter 10. Why this moment feels different. Repealing the NFA has been attempted before, but the momentum in 2025 is unlike anything we've seen. Why? The Bruin precedent. The Supreme Court now requires modern gun laws to match historical practices. The NFA has no such history. $200 tax repeal. Congress already voted to eliminate the outdated tax, undermining the foundation of the NFA. State-level pressure. With 15 states backing GOA's lawsuit, the courts see broad political support. Judicial shift. A more originalist Supreme Court is less willing to tolerate regulations with no constitutional basis. Together, these factors create the strongest chance in a century to dismantle the NFA. And if it falls, it will change the legal landscape for generations. What comes next? This fight isn't ending here. It's only the beginning. The NFA battle is one front, but there are already new lawsuits, new bills, and new rulings coming that could decide the future of the Second Amendment. And I promise you this, the next case we cover will be even bigger than what you heard today. So here's your part. Share this video with friends, family, and your community, because most people still don't realize how much is changing. Drop a comment. If the NFA does fall, what's the next law you think should be challenged? I'll be reading and pulling your ideas for future episodes. And of course, subscribe to Survival Firearms right now, because when the next ruling drops, you don't want to hear about it secondhand. You'll want to be here when it breaks. Stay ready, stay alert, and above all, stay free. We'll see you in the next video. Don't miss it.